Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are in Caesarea Maritima, which was the capital of paganism and idolatry in Israel. Let's visit the theater, the hippodrome, the site of the gladiator fights, Pontius Pilate's palace, and end at the largest pagan temple in all of the Holy Land and understand the connection of this place with the Bible. So if you're ready, let's get started. The history of this place begins 2,400 years ago when a small fishing village was founded here. But the region really enters history when King Herod the Great comes to power and transforms this small village into one of the largest cities in the entire Roman Empire. A city that had up to 125,000 inhabitants, which at that time was a lot. But Herod doesn't build this place to be just another city in Judea. He builds Caesarea with the aim of being the capital of paganism and idolatry throughout the province. And that's exactly what we see with our own eyes these days. We barely entered the city, and the first thing we see here is a huge amount of idolatry statues. When 2,000 years ago the Romans created statues, they didn't just create them for decoration to be beautiful. They literally worshipped, idolized these images, and that's why here we see an example of this foot. But imagine the original size of the statue. If the foot is already this size, so a great idolatry was done here, a great worship to these statues. And they made them with all dedication and all care, everything of the best and the best they could have. One of the things we can notice is that these statues are all made with a special stone with marble, but there is no marble anywhere in Israel. The closest places that have marble are in Turkey or Greece. So literally, they stress tons and tons and tons of stones by ship to here, the region of Caesarea, to be able to carve them, to transform them into these statues. So we see that they didn't just make statues, but they did it with a very clear purpose and with a huge dedication and effort. Caesarea Maritima is one of the best preserved archaeological parks in all of Israel. Israel walking around here is really a journey through time and helps us better understand what life was like here in the Roman period and in biblical times. So don't miss visiting Caesarea on your next trip to Israel. King Herod built this gigantic city in just 12 years from 22 to 10 before Christ and named it Caesarea in honor of the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus. And he called it Maritime, since we are next to the Mediterranean Sea, and to distinguish it from Caesarea Philippi, which is in the north of Israel. And when I say that this is a gigantic city, it's not an exaggeration. Now see the size of the place we are going to enter. We are entering a Roman theater that had a capacity for 4,000 people. People look at the size of this place. It might even be hard for you to see where I am on the screen. So here, look, folks, I'm right in the middle. But it's really fascinating to walk around this place because this theater was so well preserved that with few restorations done in modern times, it is used for shows to this day. So if you come to Israel in the spring or summer, check the schedule because you might have the opportunity to come here and watch a show in an original 2,000-year-old theater. Now, if we could go back in time, what types of shows were performed here during the Roman period? Here on this stage, theater, dance, and music shows were performed, but with religious themes dedicated to the different Roman gods. So folks, this here is a theater not just as a cultural center, but it was also a religious center. Here in these spaces that we see were pagan statues of different gods. So in each of these niches was a pagan statue. So when a person watched the theater, they were not only watching the show that was up here, but they were facing all these images. I am now walking on the stage where the shows were really made, and the construction was like this with this semicircle because they used the architecture to create a sufficiently strong echo so that all 4,000 people could hear the artists, since there were no microphones or sound systems. Also, look at this carved marble here. The constructions we see, besides their impressive size, they were covered with all this. So it was a gigantic and very luxurious city in the style of Herod the Great. And among all the beautiful stones that are here, I want to talk to you about this one. Can you guess what this construction is here? Here, this is a sarcophagus, which means it's a coffin that pagans used in the ancient world. The Jewish tradition was not to be buried in sarcophagi, but Jews were buried either in the ground or inside caves, as in the case of Jesus. This here is one of many proofs that the city of Caesarea was a city where pagans lived and also ended their days. And here we have even more information. Here we have the name of the person who was buried here, and it is written in Greek that this is the sarcophagus of Procopius, and who was also buried in the manner of the pagans, in the manner of the Gentiles, was Herod himself. Herod was buried in a sarcophagus in Herodion, another of his constructions, and the sarcophagus and the mausoleum of Herod was found. So today we have his sarcophagus preserved inside the Israel Museum. We are now entering a large palace built by whom? Of course, by King Herod. Herod ruled from Jerusalem, which was the capital, but he built here a beautiful and luxurious palace to be his summer house, his King Herod's holiday home. And did he really enjoy the good life? Here there were tricliniums, which were dining rooms for reclining and receiving guests. There were gardens with flowers and even a spa with heated water. And what else was there in this palace? Look down here with me. This was a large pool. Yes, Herod had a pool here. And not only that, with an island in the middle, and probably in the middle of that island, also a pagan statue. And how did it work? Every time the sea level rose, it filled the pool and then the entrances could be closed. When they wanted to empty the pool, they just had to open these entrances and wait for the tide to go down. And so he had fresh water all the time in his pool. 2,000-year-old technology. A few years after Herod, the Romans decide to pass control of Judea to pagan Roman governors. And since Jerusalem was a Jewish city, they officially moved the capital to Caesarea Maritima, as the Romans preferred to live here in this pagan city. And Caesarea served as the capital for 650 years. And that's why Pontius Pilate, when he becomes the governor of Judea in the year 26 AD, he also uses this palace as his governmental residence, the official residence. The same Pontius Pilate who condemned Jesus to death by crucifixion lived right here. And look at the stone that was also found right here next to it. This stone was found in archaeological excavations in 1961, and the following is written on it. Which means that it was dedicated to Tiberius by Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea. This is extremely important because so far this is the only archaeological evidence we have of the existence of Pontius Pilate, and even more so of him as the governor of Judea in the time of Tiberius. And so what we know from the Bible and ancient texts about the existence of Pontius Pilate is also proven here through archaeology. From the moment the Romans conquered the region and annexed the Judean province, they tried to introduce their pagan culture and religion here. This is done through theaters, bathhouses, hippodromes, pagan temples, but also in small things like in latrines. And to a latrine we are going now. We just left the palace, and after walking a few meters, we arrive at this place. Look at this here. This is a latrine, a Roman public bathroom. And how did it work? How did people use it at that time? People would climb up here and sit between two stones. And everything a person felt like doing was done here. Although you understand me here, it was done and water was passed underneath and the water took everything that was done away. Now, why is this latrine so different from the local culture of the time, from what the Bible teaches? You can see that on one side and the other and forward there is no kind of division. This bathroom was mixed between men and women and was on a main path. So while the person was here exposed, doing their needs, the population passed by here. There was no modesty, unlike the Bible, which says that we should treat our body with modesty. And after people did everything they wanted here, they could enter the big hippodrome. In this place, chariot races were held, and this was also a bloody Roman sport. When these chariots passed here at high speed, there were accidents, and therefore some of the competitors and animals died. And this was a part of this bloodlust that the Romans had, because in addition to the hippodrome races, gladiator games were held here once every 5 years. People literally fought to the death here among themselves and with wild animals, truly against the teachings of the Bible that speak of the importance of human life. Most Jews at that time were against what was happening here in Caesarea, the bloody games, the chariot races, the images inside the theater, the themes of the shows. But without a doubt, the greatest affront to the people of Israel was when the Romans tried to introduce idolatry and paganism to Jerusalem, as we can read in the accounts of the historian Flavius Josephus, who lived in the 1st century. Pilate, governor of Judea, sent from the winter quarters of Caesarea to Jerusalem troops that carried on their banners the image of the emperor, which is so contrary to our laws that no other governor before him had done it. The troops entered at night, and so it was only the next day that it was noticed. Immediately the Jews went in large numbers to seek Pilate in Caesarea, and for several days begged him to remove those banners. He denied the request, saying that he could not do it without offending the emperor. But as they continued to insist, he ordered his soldiers on the 7th day to secretly keep themselves armed, and then ascended to the tribunal that he had purposely erected in the place of public exercises, because it was the most appropriate place to hide them. However, the Jews insisted on the request. Then he signaled the soldiers, who immediately surrounded them on all sides and threatened to have them killed if they continued to insist and did not each return to their homes. At these words, they all threw themselves to the ground and presented their bare throats to him, to show that the observance of their laws was much more dear to them than life itself. Such steadfastness and fervor for religion caused such astonishment in Pilate that he ordered the standards to be taken from Jerusalem to Caesarea. Here we see a clear friction between Roman idolatry and the monotheism of the people of Israel. But even amid strong protests from the Jewish community, Herod and the Romans built pagan temples in this region. And the most important we will see now. And look here, more paganism in this sarcophagus. This is the image of a gorgon, which according to Greco-Roman mythology was a creature with snake hair and turned those who looked at her into stone. The most famous gorgon of all was called Medusa. We are climbing the stairs of the temple of the goddess Roma and Augustus. These stairs were rebuilt over the originals, which can still be seen to this day from the side. And just by the size of these stairs and the climb, we can get an idea of how big the original temple was. Original here climbing, one of the first things we come across is this altar. We see a sacrifice altar from this temple, and animals were sacrificed here, among them probably pigs. The temple that was here was 98 feet wide and 45 deep, and it was made of carved and worked stones. We can see here an original part of it, and in front of the temple there were two colossal statues, the largest of them of Emperor Augustus. So those boats that came from far out at sea when they looked at Caesarea, the first thing they saw was the Emperor of Rome, and next to him was a statue that ancient writings say was beautiful, and this statue was of the goddess Roma. The temple that was in this place was one of many examples of how the Romans did not accept the monotheism of the people of Israel and did not like how the Jews did not participate in the imperial worship and the worship of images, for example, of Roma and Augustus. And after years of oppression, the great Jewish rebellion against the Romans begins right here in Caesarea in the year 66 AD, and it will end with the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem and the entire province of Judea. And to celebrate their victory, the Romans held celebratory games in honor of Titus here in Caesarea in the year 70, marking the destruction of Jerusalem. And 2,500 Jews are killed in gladiator games in the hippodrome that we saw earlier. In the following years, most of the people of Israel were expelled, enslaved, or killed. And in the year 136 Anno Domini, the Jews become a minority in their own land. Even after this great defeat, the people of Israel maintained their faith in God and did not abandon their customs or the dream of being a free people in their own land. It took 1,900 years, but the people managed to return, and in 1948, the independence of the State of Israel was declared. And where is the Roman Empire today? As we can see, the temple was dismantled and the stones were used in other constructions. The Roman Empire disappeared. Today's Rome is not the same as that time. They no longer have the same customs, the same clothes, the same language, nor the same religion. The Roman Empire has become just another page in the history books. Meanwhile, the people of Israel managed to return to their land and are here to this day. Or as we say in Hebrew, Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live. Today, we talk a lot about pagan and Roman Caesarea, but besides that, many biblical stories happened at this location. Caesarea is a very important place for the beginning of Christianity. Archaeological evidence of this is this church that is here behind us, and that's why I invite you all to join us next Sunday to learn about the entire biblical history of this beautiful city with so many secrets. A big kiss and see you next Sunday.